Hi everybody, it's Amy and welcome to the channel, or welcome back. I hope that you're doing well. Let me know how you're doing in the comments. Today we are continuing with this fantasy romance series I have been doing. My previous videos you can go and check out are YA fantasy romance and cozy fantasy romance, and today we are talking strictly adult fantasy romance. So these are going to vary kind of on the spice scale. I will try to let you know about that, and I don't have a ton in this category, but the ones that I have liked, I've really enjoyed, so I wanted to share those with you. But definitely let me know at the end of the video what fantasy romance recommendations you have for me. I definitely want to check them out. I'm kind of collecting a list for myself. I want to learn more about this category and see what kind of things that I like. But I tend to kind of gravitate towards stories where it's either like a rom-com with some magic or a fantasy with a romantic subplot. So that's kind of what we're getting into. Let's get comfortable, let's grab our tea or coffee, and let's get into this list. First up, we have a book that actually just got its sequel for its duology, and that is The Heartless Hunter. The sequel, The Rebel Witch, just came out recently, but I've only read the first book so far, but I really enjoyed it. So this story is about Rune Winters, who is secretly a witch, but posing as a wealthy socialite, and she happens to be kind of a vigilante called the Crimson Moth. And this vigilante is helping witches escape oppression that is going on within this kind of kingdom, this world. And then we have her counterpart, Gideon Sharp, who is a ruthless witch hunter and is hunting down the Crimson Moth and unknowingly hunting down Rune. So Gideon and Rune kind of partner up and kind of get into this dangerous game of deception and sort of fake dating. But as the story goes on, their fates kind of intertwine, and they definitely kind of shift their opinions and perspectives about things, and maybe even change alliances. This is definitely a high stakes romantasy. There are life or death situations, and I say romantasy because it is a bit more focused on the romance. And this is a little bit newer for me. So there is fantasy, there is magic, but the romance is a more forward focus. And this is definitely an enemies to lovers story, an actual one. I know that that label kind of gets thrown around and it's like they vaguely might not like each other, but this is like full on enemies. This is a witch hunter, basically kind of like a cop or an investigator, and is hunting down this rogue vigilante. So they are very much on opposite sides of the story. And this was just a thrilling, kind of unpredictable story with some unexpected twists. I really did not see the ending coming. You may, I kind of am a little more oblivious. I try to just kind of like turn the brain off and let the story take me where it wants to. But I found it to be just a really thrilling read with these twists. So when it comes to the magic of this world, we kind of have this eerie sort of witchy blood magic that's very much tied to power and control. It can corrupt people, but there's also like use of menstruation in here as well. I don't want to give too much away about it, but just letting you know that's in there because it could throw you off a little bit. I'm glad that I knew ahead of time, but I really thought the magic system was pretty cool. It really creates kind of this dark edge to the story. I really enjoyed this story because it was fast-paced action, and we definitely have some morally gray characters that you just kind of love, and those are definitely like my bread and butter. I definitely like a story that keeps me interested and has enough action in between the moments of dialogue or the slower moments, so it's just well-paced and it definitely keeps you entertained. So even though this romance is pretty complex and messy and definitely full of secrets, I really felt like there was just this emotional charge and even vulnerability to the story. I feel like the romance was definitely grounded and I believed in the chemistry between the characters. I feel like with enemies to lovers, it can kind of be like, okay, you guys don't like each other, so why are you getting together? But I found this was believable even in this fantastical story. And this is a little bit spicy, so just be aware of that. It's kind of like some steamy talk and steamy thoughts, and I think there's one spicing in it, so it's nothing too crazy, but I really enjoy this, and I'm definitely looking forward to reading Rebel Witch. You know, I really like a book, or if I haven't read it, I just really want to read it if it's on my shelf. And this definitely was a fantasy romance story that I really enjoyed, and that is the Shepherd King duology by Rachel Gillig. So we got one Dark Window and we got two Twisted Crowns, and it's just a fun time. It's this kind of gothic sort of fantasy with a romance subplot. I really love the main characters, and it being a duology that's not too long, it's not too big of a commitment to read. So we've got Elsbeth Spindle, our FMC, and she has kind of this curse where she has this sort of strange kind of evil creature that lives in her mind. And she has to partner up with an unlikely noble, Raven Yu, in order to hunt down these magical cards called Providence cards. So the kingdom of this world is kind of locked in by this like dark mist, and we have a threat of dark magic. So our main characters and some side characters are having to partner up in order to uncover some hidden truths about the magic of this world and face some pretty dangerous challenges. This story is definitely about fate and about power and about destiny and seeing how you can kind of carve out your own story. And I think with each character, they each have their own kind of unique sort of path that they're taking, not just the main characters, but even side characters as well. And I really enjoyed that about the story, that we had such well fleshed out characters. So again, this is a very gothic fantasy. We have kind of a dark and brooding atmosphere, and we have a really unique card-based magic system. We kind of have these cards that some people have related to like tarot cards, but each card has a different magical power attached to it. We also have some uncontrolled magic that people are getting through kind of a sickness that goes through the kingdom. And this is, again, an uncontrolled magic, but the government is trying to kind of control it and quell it so that the government actually has power, and that's kind of why they're using these cards in order to have magical abilities. So with kind of a corrupt government, we obviously have some pretty compelling villains in this story. I just feel like there are just some great characters in this story, even down to the side characters. And we definitely have like a found family sort of aspect to the story, and I feel like it's just very endearing, even though it is kind of dark and there's some pretty difficult situations in the story as well. But this is definitely a story with some high stakes. It's fast, action-packed, and it's definitely a good blend with the romance. The romance is definitely a subplot of this story. So this is definitely a slow burn romance that's built on trust as we're kind of going through these difficult challenges throughout the story. There is a lot of tension and really just great chemistry. And we have kind of a main romance between the two main characters, and then we sort of have a side romance, and they are both pretty compelling. And I think getting kind of the 2-for-1 is pretty fun, but the stories within these romances are just so emotional and have a lot of depth to them, and I feel like the connection and the chemistry between the characters is very believable. So if you were looking for something that is a gothic sort of dark brooding atmosphere fantasy with romance that has emotional depth to it and is still action-packed and fast-paced, with some great villains and kind of a mysterious sort of dark and brewing anti-hero character, I would definitely recommend. I am a huge Adrienne Young fan. She is an incredible writer. She just writes these really gripping, kind of gritty sort of stories, but still is able to kind of blend romance in the story and make the stories really tender and grounded and believable. I feel like that's what compels me with romances, is just having them feel real and believable. And she definitely does that in a really magical way in the magical realism story, The Unmaking of June Farrow. Now, this is a story that I would recommend going into as blindly as possible, but I'm going to give you a little bit of it just so you can kind of decide whether this would be for you or not. So this is a story taking place in the American South in North Carolina, and we are following a character named June Farrow in present day, and she is trying to uncover the secrets of this family curse that her family has endured for generations, where the women of her family kind of lose their minds. It's almost like a dementia, memory loss sort of curse. And it is just something that doesn't make sense. And there are a lot of strange happenings that surround it. And June is kind of starting to experience it. So she's trying to figure out how to stop it. So this just has this really kind of mysterious and enchanting sort of atmosphere to it. And we're obviously dealing with some family secrets. And I don't want to give it away, like what is the more like magical elements of this story, but let's just say it is spanning generations. And even though this story is a romance kind of story, it is still really suspenseful. We have mystery in here, and there are definitely unexpected twists, but we do have a really moving and beautiful romance. Again, I don't want to give too much away about the story, but the romance, I feel like it really demonstrates well how a couple can kind of reconnect after dealing with issues and different circumstances within their relationship. And I feel like that is just really relatable for anyone who is in a romantic relationship. And I think even if it's in this sort of fantastical sort of story and there's this magic involved, I think it is still super relatable, and it is just so moving and beautiful. So if you haven't read anything by Adrienne Young, I think that this is a really great place to start as far as her adult books. I definitely recommend her YA as well, but this is just a absolutely fantastic standalone book, and I think you'll really enjoy it. My next book on this list, I am really surprised I don't see more people talk about, and that is The Watchmaker's Daughter by C.J. Archer. This is such a fun book in kind of a gas lamp Victorian England sort of story. And we are following our main character, India Steele, and she just had her inheritance stolen away from her ex-fiance. So we already got a complicated situation from the start. And her inheritance was her father's watchmaking shop. Basically, she becomes destitute and unemployable, even though she has trained under her father to become this sort of master watchmaker, but she's kind of rejected by the watchmaking guild. So she kind of has to take up employment in other places, and she takes up a job with a man named Matthew Glass, this kind of strange American who has come to London, and he is seeking a special watchmaker for some mysterious reasons. So as you delve deeper into the kind of quest that we're going on in this story, we uncover some secrets about some magical timepieces, and we face some potential dangers with Matthew's sort of complicated past, and we even uncover some latent magical abilities that India has. What I really love about this story is the romance, and it's kind of subtle, but it is a just palpable slow burn story between India and Matthew, and it's all just based on mutual trust and attraction. There are just these really subtle moments between the characters that are still very emotionally charged, and they're just delicious. And it's just all as we're going on this sort of quest together and facing these different challenges together. India is a very resilient character, and India is a very resilient character. She's having to face a lot of different challenges, but she always seems to rise above them. And Matthew has a very protective nature and is just wanting to keep her safe. And it just kind of creates this tension that allows them to connect. This is very much about unspoken feelings and these sort of external obstacles that are keeping them from voicing their attraction to each other. But it is just a really good romance. And The story itself has so much else going on as we're going on this magical quest, and we have some really great side characters with Matthew's sort of gang of employees, and it is just so much fun. And it's a short story, it didn't take too long to get through, but I definitely recommend. Now for something funny, we have got the witchy rom-com series by Erin Sterling, the Ex Hex series. So we have 3 books within this series. I have only read the first 2, but we have the Ex Hex, we have the Kiss Curse, and we have the Wedding Witch. The Wedding Witch takes place around the holidays, so I'll probably read that in like November, December of this year, but I really enjoyed the first 2 books. So we have Vivi Jones, a witch in a small town in Georgia, and she breaks up with her boyfriend and she puts a curse on him accidentally. And then 9 years later, Reese Penhallow, her ex, comes back to town and there is just magical chaos that is triggered, and they kind of have to go on a quest together in order to quell this situation. This is a unique story because it's taking place in like a small town in Georgia that is actually kind of a college town, but it's a witchy college town. We have a magical college where non-magical people can take regular classes, but we also have classes for the witches as well. And it is just this magical place where everybody is kind of coexisting secretly, and it just creates a lot of interest and intrigue. But with this supernatural threat on the town, we're having Vivi and Reese having to partner together, and so old feelings kind of resurface, and it just creates this great second chance romance. This is really fun and laugh out loud kind of funny story. It is definitely a bit spicy. We have a few spice scenes in here. This is probably the spiciest book on this list that I have for you, so just be aware of that. But it is full of shenanigans and obviously romance and mystery. It is so much fun and I definitely recommend. So in the Kiss Curse, we are continuing with some side characters that were in the first book, the Ex Hex. So I would definitely recommend reading the Ex Hex and then the Kiss Curse so that you get the context and understanding for the different characters, but you could possibly read this as a standalone, but this is just what I recommend. So we are following Gwen Jones, a witch and the cousin of our main character Vivi from the Ex Hex, and she runs a pretty successful witchy witchcraft shop in this small town, and she helps tutor young witches. But we have Wells Penhallow, the brother of Reese from the first book, who is part of this rival family, and he comes to town and opens up his own witchcraft shop right across the street from Gwen's, so it definitely creates a business rivalry. So their competition definitely intensifies when they're having to kind of partner up when a new mysterious magical coven comes to town and is kind of threatening the magical balance of the town. So we definitely have a rivals to lovers kind of story. We have some really great banter and definitely some undeniable attraction, but we kind of have this magical mishap that happens where there is a kiss that is amplified by magic and it just intensifies their mutual attraction, and it's just absolutely hilarious. So again, we are having to partner up in order to face this common threat, and it just evolves into this really deep and passionate relationship. And just like the first book, it's blending humor and romance and supernatural intrigue into just a really entertaining story. So there is my list, guys. I know this one was a little bit shorter, but I feel like this is kind of my entry into adult fantasy romance. I feel like I've explored cozy and YA a little bit more, but I have really enjoyed the ones that I have read. And if you like these and have recommendations that are similar, definitely leave them in the comments. But if you like something that has enough like magical intrigue and enough plot where the romance is not necessarily the central focus, even if it is kind of a driving factor, I would definitely recommend these books. But I had a lot of fun reading these. I hope you had fun listening, and I will see you guys later. Bye!